Fallout 3 has a pretty solid assortment of weaponry in it, most of which is designed to do damage to friends or foes in one way or another. But there's one weapon that's geared towards the more sadistic among you, a weapon that gives most of those who cross its path an unrewarding and nightmarish life as a slave. Can you beat Fallout 3 with only the Mesmetron? Because the Mesmetron is an energy weapon, the special attributes I'm maxing out are Perception, as it's tied to energy weapons, Luck, because it affects all skills and, well, luck, and Charisma to buff the barter skill to let me get a discount on stim packs without having to threaten to snap a merchant's back in half with my bare hands. Not that I could, since my strength is at 1, but it's important that they think that I could do that. Dad was less than interested in looking at his little freak show. My 10th birthday party was a little weird, but I'm not going to question it. I'm sure it was just a mistake that someone forgot to get balloons, and I went down to the basement to meet the single Jonas brother. I won't waste too much time here because I explained in a previous video why killing the rad roaches with a BB gun is okay. It's because the game forces you to do it to proceed. With the roach dead, I rigged my test results in my favor and picked barter, energy weapons, and medicine as my tag skills, and began escaping the vault. Escaping the vault without attacking anything isn't all that difficult, though it is annoying that Officer Kendall was more interested in beating me to death with his favorite toy than he was killing the rad roaches. I picked up every object I could find on my way out of the vault, escaped, leveled up once I was outside, put the points into energy weapons and medicine, and had 2 whole perks to pick from. I chose intense training to raise my intelligence up to the point that I could get the educated perk. I then arrived at Megaton, avoided the sheriff, sold everything that was worthless to me to the one woman in Megaton who likes feces, bought all her stim packs, spoke to Mr. Burke, and was off to Paradise Falls, because there's only one Mesmetron in the base game, and it's in Paradise Falls. The unfortunate thing is that Paradise Falls is a good bit to the north, and there are raiders and all sorts of unpleasantness between me and my weapon. I lured a raider to a group of wastelanders and an Ibot that took care of it rather quickly, failed at the seesaw, took a few bullets to various body parts as I discovered a new location, walked in on a Mirelurk family reunion, at the old swimming hole, stopped by the grocery store, and finally arrived at Paradise Falls. Grouse is not the nicest person to deal with, but he guards the entrance and won't let you in unless you pay him 500 caps. Or, you can go and get him a few special clients by using the Mesmetron and an explosive collar. There are a few immediate drawbacks to the Mesmetron. The first is that it takes up so much of the screen when you have it out. The next is that it only does 1 damage, it only has 50 shots initially, and the ammo is absurdly expensive, 200 caps for 10 more shots. The ammo isn't cheap because it's a powerful weapon. Half the time, it'll turn an enemy's brain into scrambled eggs, allowing you to steal their stuff, slip a collar on them, and send them off to Paradise Falls to begin their new, horrible life. 30% of the time, their brain is sunny side up, resulting in an individual that attacks anyone and anything it can find. The remaining 20% of the time is what happens when you slam an egg against a cement wall. The victim is confused for a few seconds, and then their head explodes. After testing out my new toy on a group of raiders, I stopped by Big Town to find Grouse's first victim, who wasn't there because he was kidnapped by a group of super mutants. Never one to let a worthwhile slave get away, I made a mental note to check it out sometime in the future, returned to Megaton, picked a random settler to become a slave, picked up my 250 caps from Grouse, bought a few more batteries, and went to rescue Big Town's big boy. There were a few super mutants guarding the place. Luckily, I'd gotten a stealth boy off some sad sack and used it to sneak inside the headquarters. I wandered around a bit until I made it to the 2nd floor, which is where I discovered that the Mesmetron doesn't work on super mutants. How fun! It was also around this point it dawned on me that getting through a super mutant infested building to rescue a teenager might not have been the best idea. Nevertheless, I pressed onward until I got deeper into the basement, where I continued sneaking around. I found Shorty, who wasn't the kid I was after, but I armed him with a knife, and for a while it looked like he was the only valuable ally in my rescue mission. Then he died. More super mutants found me, and I started to panic. In a stroke of dumb luck, I found Red, who was stuck in a jail cell with a lock I couldn't pick. It seemed as though all hope was lost, but just for feces and giggles, I used the Mesmetron on him, put a collar on him, and told him to get to Paradise Falls, despite still being behind bars. I left him down there, escaped the super mutant camp, returned to Grouse, and it turned out that my stupid plan that shouldn't have worked at all worked like a charm. With 1 victim down and 3 to go, I plotted a course for my next target, Arkansas, the estranged cousin of Milton Minefield. I blew off a few of my legs in the process of getting to him, but once I did, I deep-fried his noodle, took his stuff, wrapped a pretty collar around his wrinkled neck, and sent him off to hell. Grouse unenthusiastically informed me that he planned to torment the old profanity. He gave me a new collar, and I was off to Tenpenny Tower for my third special friend. The trek out there was long and boring. Defender Morgan provided some entertainment when the few raiders entered his camp. I thought Morgan would make for a good slave, so I used the Mesmetron on him, but all it did was piss him off, so I let him be and kept moving. I found another victim closer to the tower. His name was Tinker Joe, and he liked robots. He didn't last long after I fried his brain. I might not get paid for enslaving him, but at least his robots are condemned to an eternity of wandering around the wasteland without an owner. The game crashed just outside of Tenpenny Tower. I tried to get a collar on Roy Phillips because a slave that lives forever seemed like a solid idea, but he turned hostile and engaged in a shootout with the tower guards and got himself ended. Inside the tower, I eventually found Susan Lancaster, hypnotized her with my magic box, took her key because who knows where it goes or what secrets lie within, and sent her to Paradise Falls. With one victim left, I thought to send the goody two-shoes sheriff to Paradise. Didn't work since he started doing bad things to the citizens of Townsville. With another failed capture, I sold what I could to Moira, bought more stim packs, and finally ended her wretched existence by getting her to turn on her friends. Death has never looked as good as it did on her. My next objective was Rivet City for 2 reasons. My last target is there, and I'll have to go there sometime in the future anyway. The Mesmetron doesn't work on children because Bethesda is a good company. As I got closer, Red died. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I feel safe in assuming that Grouse was somehow involved. Closer to Rivet City, I found a wasteland junkie and hit the mother lode on chems that I probably wouldn't ever use. Sent my latest victim to his new home, followed him there to collect my reward, discovered Arlington Cemetery. Someone or something exploded my head. I passed by the Jefferson Memorial and arrived at Rivet City to find my target. His name is Flack, and thankfully he's not the one who sells weapons at Flack and Shrapnel Supply Depot Emporium. I zapped his brain, took his key, sent him to Paradise Falls, and nobody was happy about it besides me. So I fled the scene, got my 250 caps from Grouse, who made a pretty vague implication about torture. I stocked up on Mesmetron batteries, went inside Paradise Falls to buy more stim packs, and could finally continue with the main quest. But first, a problem. Megaton still exists. I went up to meet Mr. Burke at Tenpenny Tower, remembered that I hadn't even rigged the bomb yet, returned to Megaton to rig the bomb to explode, started a firefight atop Tenpenny Tower, and watched Megaton burn as I held Alistair Tenpenny's corpse in my arms. I set my sights on Vault 87, hit the road, and a thought entered my brain. The Mesmetron doesn't work on super mutants, and there are a lot of them inhabiting the Jefferson Memorial that'll have to be cleared out to advance the story. I thought for a little while about how to handle this little situation, and came up with no ideas on how to proceed. The only way forward is to go back to before I blew up Megaton so that I could go to Megaton and get Jericho as my companion to do the work for me at the Jefferson Memorial. You may think this is cheating, but it's not. When Jericho kills a super mutant, I get no experience for it and no numbers in the stats section of my Pip-Boy update. This is perfectly legal. Once he'd cleared out the building for me, I told him to wait outside the memorial, since he's now outlived his usefulness to me, and went back to Tenpenny Tower to blow up Megaton again. I didn't hold Tenpenny's corpse, but his corpse was still there. From there, it was time to go save Dad from hologram land down in the basement. Nothing worth mentioning happened on the way out there. I entered the vault, found out that my brain-scrambling device doesn't work on robo-brains, which seems like false advertising, but whatever. I put on the jumpsuit, entered the world of make-believe, performed the usual actions of letting loose the American heroes to slay the savage communists, and rescued Dad. Maybe staying in the simulation would have been a better idea, because outside is a war zone. There's raiders and beavers and Brotherhood outcasts everywhere. I turned one of the raiders against the others, but it didn't last long. The outcasts finished off the remaining raiders soon after. Then I pinned one against the other, and when only a single outcast remained, Dad stepped in with his trusty knife and spent a while working him over. Once anyone not related to me was down and out, I returned to Rivet City and thought about how nice Mr. Zimmer would look with a slave collar. He wasn't thrilled with that idea. I momentarily hoped that I just condemned him to a life of being beaten unconscious over and over again by his synth, but that didn't last long either. Dad told me the plan. I turned a security guard against the citizens of Rivet City because I thought his armor would complement my skin rather nicely, and I returned to the Jefferson Memorial to get my hands dirty. This one guy, Daniel Agincourt, he just rubbed me the wrong way. I guess there are some NPCs you just can't enslave, so he just got pissed off and followed me around the memorial, taking shots at me every so often. I got the fuses and fixed stuff. Danny Boy was somewhere where he shouldn't have been, and the Enclave arrived. I took one step forward and one step back here. The step forward was figuring out that I could use my Mesmetron to strip the equipment from Enclave soldiers, ridding them of a lot of their power. The step back was that I didn't have a slave collar. I spent a while getting the soldiers to fight amongst themselves. I spoke to Dad as he was lying on the floor dying, and then something amazing happened. I proved that horrible insult and name-calling can make people change after all. Madison Lee picked up a gun and took the fight to a naked Enclave soldier. But again, there's bad that comes with the good. Daniel was down in the escape tunnel, and he'd not only convinced his friends to kill me, but he made sure they were all armed as well. Madison killed them all, including Garza, ensuring that we wouldn't have to deal with him later. Jericho showed up in the most unlikely of places, and I told him to step off. Then I fried his brain, hoping that Madison, the Enclave soldiers, or the feral ghouls would get him. Madison and I escaped, arrived at the Citadel. I caused a brief civil war in the library, got the location of Vault 87, returned to Groose again to get another collar and buy more ammo, and went to get me a slave from Vault 101. Things went pretty well down there. I got Freddy to go out guns blazing. I made Amata prettier than she's ever been before, put Old Lady Palmer out of her misery, brainwashed a tricycle, met the Overseer, got a new Vault suit, solved all their problems, and left the Vault a hero, never to return. Before making the little journey to Little Lamplight, I stopped by Megaton to see how things were going. It looked about the same as it did the last time I was there. I let the big boys in Big Town know about their friend Red, failed their quest, and was off to Little People Land. To say that things went south quickly would be a hell of an understatement. For reasons I still don't understand, the game started crashing like crazy. It got to the point where I'd press continue on the main menu, the game would load, then crash immediately, which is a problem, since pressing load on the main menu also crashes the game. So, again, the only viable option was backtracking. I forgot to mention earlier that saving through the menu also sometimes caused the game to crash, which is why I didn't do it very often. This also means that all my work in Vault 101 was for nothing, because I went back to where I was when I just arrived, immediately left, and headed for Little Lamplight. I got lucky and passed the speech check on my second attempt. The little swear word opened up the way to the scary passage, and I pretty much ignored every super mutant I came across. The elephants in the audience may remember what I said about the Mesmetron not working on super mutants, which makes Vault 87 an exceptionally unpleasant place to be for people named Degenerate. Everything went about as badly as I expected until I freed Fox. I don't think I really need to explain why this is a bad situation. God bless Fox, he really tried to fend them off, but he never stood a chance. I ran past the super mutants on the way to the reactor, which sort of worked, until I grabbed the Gek and got stuck in just about the worst place you could get stuck in Fallout 3. And for once, that isn't an exaggeration. The world corrected itself when the Enclave ambushed me and took me to their headquarters in the northwest. For the second time, I forgot to get a slave collar before I started hypnotizing Enclave soldiers. I tried to enslave the president, failed, took his vial, and began trying to escape Raven Rock. I say try, because once again, the game began to break down around me. Crashes were abundant, and I started getting really annoyed. I eventually resorted to the Jeff Ramsey technique of walking backwards towards your nightmare. It worked, I finally escaped, went back to the Citadel, and prepared for the end. A funny thing happened as I went to meet Elder Lyons. The very fabric of reality began to crumble. Crashes occurred at a previously undreamt of rate. The culprit, I suspect, was this one soldier who kept blinking into existence wherever I was. Anyone who studied higher-level mathematics will be able to tell you that 2 points cannot exist at the same place. Just as there can only be one official Ratatouille fan club Discord server in this dimension, there cannot be 2 creatures occupying the same space at the same time. I got through it by being incredibly stubborn. I manually saved every 15 seconds or so, and when the game would crash, I'd still made some progress. But after a lot of time passed, I got through it. Equipped my power armor, fried Knight Captain Durka's brains in hopes that someone would kill her, and took my place among my armored brothers and sisters as we marched behind Liberty Prime to our demise. But unfortunately, I'm as stupid as I am stubborn. I blasted Paladin Febrez's brain with my brain gun. Everyone else opened fire on him, killed him, then opened fire on me. Oddly enough, this is a way to make Liberty Prime become your enemy. It takes some finagling, but you can get him to blast you into paste. With the nonsense behind me, I reloaded a save, followed closely behind Liberty Prime until we all arrived at the Jefferson Memorial. I got a few of the soldiers to fight amongst themselves, and when one was left, I put a collar on that son of a bread box and sent him to Paradise Falls. My curiosity got the better of me. I couldn't just go inside the rotunda. I had to make sure my package got there safely. I got far away enough that I could fast travel to Paradise Falls, got my paycheck from Grouse, and there was something in the back of my mind telling me that I wasn't done yet, that there was one person I hadn't dealt with yet. I returned to the Citadel and began heading north along the river until I saw my target. The ancient evil, now calling herself Grandma Sparkle, resides at Wilhelm's Wharf. I knew better than to go inside her shack. I had no interest in her belongings, only her life. But she's crafty. She thought ahead. In all my travels, I've never once seen her wear a hat, but this time she did. I approached her, saved as a precaution, but it was too late. Her corruption had already infected me. My save menu was all sorts of screwed up. I ignored it. Nothing matters besides enslaving Grandma Sparkle, and I fired away. Not only did my attacks not damage her the way I'd hoped, she crashed the game. So I reloaded the game, ready to try again. And try I most certainly did, but nothing was effective enough. I didn't want her dead, I wanted her to suffer, and that was clearly something I wasn't going to be able to make happen. I left her to lick her wounds. I returned to the Jefferson Memorial, met up with Sarah Lyons again, and we entered the rotunda. Colonel Augustus Autumn could learn a thing or two from Grandma Sparkle, because he went down in seconds. His soldiers, with their leader dead, looked to me as their god. And as any god would, I pinned them against each other to see who lives and who dies. Long story short, they both died. Before I ended it all, I thought of one last prank. If I push Sarah Lyons inside Project Purity with me and agree to go in, we'll both die. No, that didn't work. I once again momentarily forgot the code, entered it at the last possible second, and beat Fallout 3 with only the Mesmetron. Fallout games often have weapons that you can only obtain in a certain way, like finding it at a specific location or after completing a quest. Sometimes they're a powerful reward for a job well done, and sometimes they're not. Can you beat Fallout 3 with only a repellent stick? I named myself Rufus, tried to look as much like a mole rat as possible, had a lovely chat with Father who immediately left, which shouldn't have surprised me. Nowhere in the world is a hat more useless than in an underground bunker. The repellent stick is a melee weapon, which means strength at 10 is a necessity, luck at 10 to boost all stats, and I left the rest at 4, because in the past when I've gone all in on 3 special stats, the perks I can choose from in the beginning are usually garbage. Aside from making myself one with a balloon as best I could, and following the Overseer to hear him call me a brat, the birthday was about as exciting as a birthday could be. I killed the rad roach in the basement because, as I've said in other videos, this can't be skipped. It's effectively a requirement to kill the roach to proceed. So I did it and actually took the goat for the first time in the history of ever. I tried looking at someone else's test to see what they answered, but it didn't help. That last question was a doozy. Unfortunately, it didn't matter, since I got to pick my skills anyway: lockpick, medicine, and melee weapons. Before escaping the vault, I helped Bitch by failing my attempt to convince him to go and stomp on the roaches, so I gave him a BB gun and he killed the roaches, saving his stupid mother. I got the gun back and his jacket as a thank you. If I was smart, I would have ran off after giving him the BB gun. Maybe the Overseer seeing him with it would make him sentence Butch to death. The rest of the escape was about what you'd expect. Threaten the Overseer's daughter, avoid his goons, and you're out of the vault. My first stop was Megaton, because there's only one place in the game where you can get a repellent stick. Both involve entering Craterside Supply. You can pick a lock that requires a lockpick skill of 75, or you can do the Wasteland Survival Guide quest, because one of the objectives is to test the repellent stick out on mole rats. There's just one slight, little, teeny tiny problem. There are 3 chapters to the Wasteland Survival Guide quest, and the repellent stick can't be obtained until you start chapter 2. The good news is that the quest is sort of a way to introduce you to various mechanics in the game, almost like an advanced tutorial, so none of it is very difficult. Objective number 1 was to bask in the warmth of Adam's eternal glow. I stood next to an undetonated nuclear warhead that could explode at any moment for about 4 minutes, until my nose started to get even bigger, which was a sign that I'd begun to mutate, and that I was ready to face Moira and hopefully give her some second-hand radiation sickness. After she sort of cured me, I'd left to gather supplies from the Super Duper Mega Mart. The mart was hit worse than I imagined. The shopping carts were in complete disarray. This is what the government secretly refers to as a Category 4 scenario. I'd put a few of them back where they belonged when the bullets started flying all over the place, which made me think that maybe video game cart pushing wasn't the right career path for me. I gathered the food without really knowing what I was doing, grabbed the pharmacy key but didn't actually go into the pharmacy. I found what could be a Tunnel Snake's logo and returned to Megaton. Nothing fills my bladder quite like disappointing Moira. The last section of Chapter 1 is all about blowing off limbs and watching the complete series of The Mindless Adventures of Milton Minefield, available now on video and DVD. The minefield is not an insignificant amount of steps to the north. Even though I can't attack anything, me being a pathetic weakling is par for the course at this point. The only slight problem came from a raider who blew off a few of my kneecaps with a grenade. Once I got to the minefield, I began carefully disarming frag mines one by one with the precision of a surgeon and not accidentally setting off multiple mines and blowing up several cars. I ran around for a bit, picking up mines, and as I hobbled away from the minefield, I wished that I could do the world a favor and wipe Arkansas off the map. Back in Megaton, I told tales of my bone-breaking success to Moira, and with Chapter 1 complete, it was time to start Chapter 2. For no reason other than to embrace the pain, I decided to give myself a taste of what's to come later this year by using the power of gravity and a grenade to break as many bones as possible to return to Moira to see if she was right to drop out of medical school. She fixed me up, gave me an environment suit, and finally I got my second favorite stick, the Repellent stick, and was off to kill some mole rats. I wasn't excited about killing rats. After all, it is Michael's birthday today. So I opted for the environmentally friendly option of stopping by the supermart to get revenge on the raiders who shot me a lot. This was a popular request for a challenge, but believe it or don't, this is not that bad of a weapon. It does 6 damage and can attack about as quickly as any other melee weapon. But what it does have is this wet, sloppy, slipped on a sponge, and cracked your noggin against the counter sound to it every time you attack something. I killed the raiders, leveled up, looked for snacks in their pockets, and left to find the mole rat den. But on my way there, I did spy with my little eye a vile whore who deserved to die. I cleaved her back in half with my stick, and when I did, what I saw was glorious. The smoke, coming from either my stick or her body, was a sign that she was finally dying, and her convulsing legs told me that it was not pleasant. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of crashing my game, so I dropped her body in the irradiated river to melt it away, pressed onward, took out a few raiders under a bridge, did a 360 when I discovered the citadel, and walked away in the opposite direction to find my brothers and sisters. They were not very accepting of me, probably because my stick caused their heads to explode. After watching the heads of several mole rats stain the wall with the blood that used to be inside them, I was still not 100% convinced that it was the stick that was causing it. So I kept going deeper into the sewers. It wasn't long before I found a quirk with the repellent stick. It doesn't work on robots. This Mark I turret took no damage, and with the barrel of its gun somewhere in my esophagus, I still had a 0% chance to hit it. But I didn't let that deter me. I kept going, killing more mole rats, disarming more mines, and ending the lives of more raiders. Once a solid chunk of the living creatures down there were beaten to death with this tree branch Moira found on the ground and dipped in green paint, I left the sewers, battled a mirelurk in complete darkness, and noticed that the repellent stick sort of glows in the dark. Back at Craterside Supply, I told Stupid that her stick was a complete failure, and she asked me to go plant a microphone in a mirelurk spawning pod. The good news is that the location I'm after is just across the river from the tepid sewers. Bad news is the mirelurks inside are mean and pack a hefty bag-sized punch. Well, they would if they had hands anyway. I wasn't too sure what I was after, but I found a cluster of eggs and just sorta jammed the metal doohickey inside it, left the building, and returned to Moira for the 6th time. With Chapter 2 complete, all that remained of the Wasteland Survival Guide was the 3rd chapter, also known as Chapter 3. This chapter requires going to a few far-off places, like Rivet City, so I put it on hold and broke into Moriarty's saloon to gather information about my estranged father. Rather than hacking my way into his terminal for information, I did things the fun way by being a thug for Moriarty. Some floozy owed the boss money, couldn't let that slide. I convinced her to pay me 300 caps, then I beat her to death with my stink stick and stole her belongings. Moriarty got his payment, I make a profit, and the bitch dies. It's a win-win-win situation. From there, I traveled to the tepid sewers to begin making my way to Galaxy News Radio. I encountered a group of centaurs who, on their own, are probably the toughest enemy I've faced so far. The super mutant stole that title when we both agreed that centaurs don't have rights and deserve nothing. I freed his captive, realized I'd just made a big mistake, and finished off the super mutant's work. I found the tunnels, took on a group of feral ghouls, fought another super mutant, exited the tunnels, did some damage to the super mutants' nearby Galaxy News radio, and let Cat Club do the rest. Also, some time ago I cranked the difficulty up to 11. I set it to easy instead of very easy. When the super mutant behemoth arrived, I used the tried and true tactic of hiding and letting the expendable forces waste their lives doing what I could but didn't really feel like doing. With the big lad dead, I went inside GNR to talk to Three Dog. Doing a job for him sounded like it would require effort, so instead I spent 7 minutes trying to convince him to give me the information I needed, eventually succeeded, took the Child at a Heart perk, and left to stock my pile full of stim packs from the rudest doctor on the planet and traveled to the Citadel to make my way to Rivet City. Being the overachiever that I am, I killed the super mutants outside the Jefferson Memorial, and went inside to clear out the rest as well so that I wouldn't have to do it in the future. Sometimes I do this because ammo is scarce. This time, it's really only because I'm here now, so why not get it out of the way. The normal super mutants aren't too terribly tough to kill. They take around 20 whacks each. The brutes are about twice as resistant to green death stick, taking 40 solid wallops to kill, even with the added effects of Psycho. I went through a lot of stim packs, and the repellent stick was a little worse for wear, but the super mutants inside were all dead. The deed was done, and I set off into the world of Bethesda graphics to find Rivet City. I thought for a second or two about whether or not I should kill Crow. He and his guard seemed to be in a relationship. All the more reason for them both to die. The guard went first, then the cow. In a twist I didn't see coming, the Crow cow was without a doubt the most time-consuming creature to kill so far. It took well over 100 smacks to get it to peacefully accept death. The first thing I did in Rivet City was ask around for information about the city's history. Everyone had different ideas about the past life of the boat, but Belle Bonnie flapped her gums and mentioned someone in the other half of the ship. I went ahead and talked to Dr. Lee to advance the story, even though I didn't really need to know where I was going to go next. I leapt from the balcony of the ship into the irradiated waters below to let my worries and skin be melted away. Navigated my way through Mirelurks and got the real history of Rivet City from Horace Pinkerton. Then a few Mirelurks broke into his lab and I sealed the door shut from the outside. Both the Mirelurks and Horace have no means of escape. I predict that they won't brutally murder each other, and instead, it'll become the hit new sitcom, I Love Lurky. I went back to Moira's rust hut, turned in the objective, bought and sold a bunch of stuff, asked why she's such a fucking freak, got my stick fixed or spayed, I haven't decided if it's a boy or if it's a girl yet, and journeyed to the land of places I haven't been to, in search of the official library museum. I talked to a Brotherhood scribe, played on a computer, and that was that. The last thing that needs to be done to complete the quest is to reactivate the robots at the Robco facility. I saved this one for last for a reason. There are a few mole rats and rad roaches inside the building, guarding the big book of science. I then plugged in the thing, and it went worse than I could have imagined. It confirmed my fears that robots can't be damaged by the stick. Now that wouldn't be so bad if their lasers weren't so damn effective, but they were, and I reckon there were at least 1,000 or more trying to kill me. All that Moira asked of me was to install the chip, so I didn't need to kill any of them. After escaping, I discovered Tenpenny Tower, brought a stick to a gunfight with Roy Phillips, returned to Craterside Supply, and for the first time in years, I completed the Wasteland Survival Guide side quest. And my reward for all that hard work was a mini-nuke. I expected it to be a complete waste of time, and was not let down in the least. With the path before me now clearer than ever, I fast-traveled to Tenpenny Tower to make the trek out to Smith Casey's garage. The few mole rat combat troopers guarding the garage stood no chance, and their superior officers inside fell before me alongside their recruits and auxiliary roaches. I entered the simulation. Everything seemed pretty normal, with Betty abusing the shit out of her powers as a veritable god. I activated the failsafe. Betty flaunted her height. A Chinese commando somehow lost consciousness after I escaped. I agreed to meet Dad back at Rivet City. He said maybe 3 words to me. I got lost in Rivet City again, and eventually managed to find myself at the still cleared out Jefferson Memorial. Pop sent me down to the basement to flip a switch, then made me haul my ass back up to the purifier to see how amazingly the light reflected off his nose. Then sent me back down to install a few fuses, and then turn on a computer. But at least I got to play in the sewer, so it wasn't all bad. I was a bit concerned that because power armor is sort of part robot, my stick would be ineffective. It did damage, just not nearly as much as I would have liked. Somewhere between a super mutant and a super mutant brute for how many bonks it took to kill them. Dad got what was coming to him by making me his errand boy. The scientists were all rude to me in the tunnels, as if the one person keeping them alive is somehow to blame for this situation. I had a brief conversation with the ceiling with legs before we escaped the tunnel, arrived at the Citadel. I went straight to the library to see about Vault 87, got the location from a scribe, and fast traveled to Smith Casey's garage to head north towards Little Lamplight. I took the Child at Heart perk earlier to make this easier on me. No save scumming my way through a speech check, or doing a side quest or glitching through walls, just making jokes about his probably dead mother liking the way my ass looks. Murder Pass was pretty not great. I didn't die. I'd gone in with enough stim packs to bring a decapitated walrus back from the dead. But even with melee weapons at 100, the repellent stick just didn't do a lot of damage to the super mutants. And for whatever reason, they kept crippling my head. They'd crack it open, I'd tape it shut, then they'd slam their nail board against it and I'd become an egg that's been slammed against the wall again. Really frustrating. I wanted to make Fox's existence as depressing as possible. Rather than freeing him and letting him die fighting, or ignoring him altogether, I told him I'd flip the switch and free him. Then I left him down there forever. I ignored the super mutants on the way to the reactor chamber, partially thanks to a stealth boy that worked incredibly well for a couple seconds. The environment suit Moira gave me was a complete piece of shit, which I should have seen coming. I grabbed the Gek, ignored the muties again, and got abducted by the Enclave. Upon being released by the President, I immediately showed my gratitude by killing an Enclave officer. I found this particular encounter to be a bit on the humorous side. An Enclave soldier was attacking me with a ripper, and I blocked it with a repellent stick. It's funny, because saws are usually used to cut wood, but in this instance, the wood is blocking the saw. Just take a moment to appreciate that joke. As my sides recovered from the splitting they'd just received, I talked to President Eden, took a vial of his goodies, escaped the base, and returned to the Citadel to start finishing this fight. For some reason, I wasn't locked in place during this initial interaction between Lions and Lions. Cat Club Commander Lions gave me a set of armor. Liberty Prime ascended somewhere into the stratosphere. I tried to kill Knight Captain Durga, but as she herself is shit, she is immune to the power of my stink stick. And I left the Citadel to run alongside the Brotherhood of Steel as Liberty Prime propagandized his way across the bridge and eventually to the Jefferson Memorial. I got overzealous and got annihilated by Liberty Prime. Sarah Lyons and I entered the memorial and began fighting our way through the Enclave soldiers littering the building. Sarah tried her best to be helpful, but all she did was blast me with a missile launcher multiple times. In the rotunda, I took almost every chem I had to get myself pumped up for what's to come. Colonel Autumn exploded into a pile of red goop, and we finally took back Project Purity. Last time around, I tried to push Sarah Lyons inside the purifier with me, which failed horrendously. This time, I had a new idea. I hit her with my stick until she loses consciousness. Then I seal the door and activate the purifier before she wakes up, killing both of us. I succeeded in beating the consciousness out of her, but she ran down the stairs and woke up before I had a chance to carry her limp body into the purifier. Then, a bright light took over my screen. It was the purifier. Because neither of us activated it, the purifier exploded. There was no waking up back at the Citadel after the slideshow. But I got what I wanted. Sarah Lyons and I both died at Project Purity, and I beat Fallout 3 with only the repellent stick. There is no shortage of things to do in Fallout 3, by 2008 standards anyway. But sometimes, if you want to experience everything a game has to offer, you've gotta cough up a little extra cheese. Can you beat Fallout 3's Operation Anchorage DLC without taking any damage? Unfortunately, there's a fair bit of garbage that you have to get through before you can start Operation Anchorage. I named myself Winnie the Pooh for reasons, ensured that I look like a standard American boy, escaped my metaphorical cage that the man has left me in, and started assigning special points. Normally, I'd make a character as generic as possible before starting the DLC, but Operation Anchorage has no level requirement, so I did what I thought was best for a no-damage run. Nothing in Endurance, 9 in Luck to boost all skills a bit, and the rest at 6 to provide usefulness across the board. I chose Small Guns, Speech, and Lockpick as my skills and started escaping the vault. The point is to beat Operation Anchorage without taking any damage. What happens inside the vault doesn't matter, so the escape was even less interesting than it usually is. Outside Megaton, I used a console command to set my max health to 1, so that any damage of any kind kills me. Let Deputy Weld use my body as a firing range to ensure that the command worked, and set sail for the south. Some stuff happened on the way to the DLC's starting area. I killed a few raiders and such, but nothing worth mentioning since this video is about the DLC. The game crashed as I got closer to the source of the Outcast's radio signal, which I didn't even bother listening to for some reason. Inside Bailey's Crossroad Metro were a few feral ghouls. The metro itself is lackluster in every sense of the word. Outside, at the actually crossroads, were several outcasts battling the supermutants. I made sure to use my glorified Nerf gun on them to get some experience after the outcasts finished the job, and looted their corpses. I'm not entirely sure why. I was either too stupid or the elephant genes in my body purged themselves after the Fallout 4 Syringer video, so I didn't remember what happens after you reach your final destination 5, now available on DVD. I cowered in fear for my life for a while, letting the outcasts take care of those who were even more outcasty than they are, spoke to Defender Moral, and rode an elevator down into the Brotherhood Outcast basement. Defender Sibley greeted me at the elevator with his voice that really didn't match his face. It was off-putting, but not as off-putting as the bright white walls and colorful floors that I found throughout the base. I ignored my first order of following the Defender by going upstairs and stealing a few things. I cracked open a lock and found the remains of Gary 23. This hurt me a bit on the inside. Gary 23 was one of my favorite Garys. Not the best, but definitely in the top 25 Garys of all time. Protector McGraw-Hill gave me the rundown on what I'd be doing, entering a simulation, a combat-heavy simulated combat situation, to train for, I don't remember. The simulation is the liberation of Anchorage, Alaska from Chinese communists. That thumbnail probably makes more sense if you're up to date on current events. I took a few guns from the cabinets and such, despite literally just being told that I'd be going inside a simulation. Sibley took his sweet time walking into the simulation room, probably because there was construction on Dick's Toledo. That's a very specific reference that isn't even relevant anymore. Anyway, the game crashed again. Specialist Oland was a real cunt to me. I put on the VR suit, took a seat in the chair, and finally entered the simulation. I awoke on a cliffside to Sergeant Benjamin Button Montgomery talking my head off. I immediately took off the armor because damage resistance of 37 could interfere with my inability to take damage. Plus, how many times do you get to run naked through a simulation of a war in Alaska? I leveled up, put points into sneak and small guns, since I'd found myself with a silenced 10mm pistol as my only sidearm, picked Swift Learner as my perk, watched Sergeant Button ascend the cliffside, and began making my way through all the communists standing in my way. There are two ways of going about this, stealth or not stealth. Shocking, I know. As fun as it would be to go in guns blazing, that's not really an option when a powerful sneeze is enough to kill you. So sneak attacks are the only viable option. The thing to keep in mind is that I have a silenced semi-automatic handgun and no pants, while the soldiers have fully automatic rifles. This has been a problem before. What it means for me the player and you the viewer is that I must be incredibly efficient with my attacks. The barrage of bullets sprayed my way ensures that most of the time I'll be killed immediately unless I'm behind cover. Thankfully, it wasn't long before I Ratchet & Clank 2 upped my arsenal to a sniper rifle. The added benefit of not being real is that there are ammo caches all over the place. I guess this is supposed to be a more arcadey take on Fallout? There are health packs and stuff too instead of stim packs, so I've already convinced myself that I'm right. You probably knew already, but I'll say it anyway in case you missed it when I didn't say it. I'm playing on very easy. This, and the fact that communists are notoriously spineless, means that most soldiers will die in a single shot from the sniper rifle, regardless of whether it's a sneak attack or not. All weapons are also at 100% condition, and probably don't degrade. They might, but I doubt it. I briefly got startled and almost took out our American comrade Sergeant Button. Failed because he doesn't exist and therefore can't be killed by something else that also doesn't exist, and we exited to the Anchorage cliffs of Dover to begin the process of taking out the 3 flak cannons the communists are using to try to destroy America. With this DLC being a combat-heavy experience, there's not a whole lot in the way of exploration or decision-making. There are a few spots here and there where you can find holotapes or pieces of intel that give you a shitty perk if all 10 are collected, but most of what you're doing is proceeding to an objective and fighting your way there. There's no bartering either, which means you can't pick up objects that aren't related to combat. Classic American items like packs of cigarettes, cartons of cigarettes, or individual cigarettes are worthless and borderline irrelevant. The downside of this being a no damage run is apparent at all times, but not the issue you might expect. Probably because I'm a save slut. Stalking your way through the environment like Swiper the map-stealing asshole makes most situations easy enough to deal with. Suicide is also not an option. Inside the artillery outpost, I faced my first challenge of my own making. I tried shaking things up a bit by using the Chinese assault rifle and grenades on my enemies. Both are effective in their own way, but the assault rifle takes several shots to kill. The time it takes to kill 1 or 2 enemies gives one of them enough time to open fire on yours truly and send me into cardiac arrest. A bit deeper into the building, I leveled up, raised speech to 50 like a jackass, and picked educated as my perk. Buttons warned me about the red tank passing through the water or land, hard to tell with Bethesda graphics. I did the sickest no-scope you've ever seen, tried to make my parents proud by killing someone with a knife, and got stuck for a bit in the nuke world. Several enemies with automatics dispersed throughout an area are never fun. Then things got even more not fun. The Chinese advanced to the point of manipulating time and space itself. The Crimson Dragoons wear Chinese stealth suits that make them troublesome to see, even with the added benefit of a mustache. But worst of all, they remind me of the Dragoon Air Ride from Kirby Air Ride, and that we still don't have a sequel to that game. Outside, Buttons and I arrived at the 3 artillery guns, and I died a lot. There were enemies to the left, down in front, and around the corner to the right. Walk into their line of sight, and death is all but guaranteed. It's a bit of a hassle to get through here because reliable FPS gameplay isn't one of Bethesda's strong suits, especially in 2009. Also, there are now sniper guys that spawn from nowhere and have stupid accuracy. Persistence is the name of the game. At the 3rd artillery gun, I got myself a Gauss rifle. It does far more damage than the sniper rifle, but I didn't use it much. I'm one of those people that hoards powerful weapons, thinking they'll need it down the line, which is such a fucking stupid mindset to have when you can refill your ammo every 5 minutes for free, and weapon degradation doesn't exist. I suppose I could have just told you that it was because my energy weapon skill is so low. Barry, edit that out. Back at HQ, General Chase froze me in place, making me stretch my neck to see the map as he explained what the plan was. Basically, there are 2 areas that need to be cleared out. Well, 3 actually, but the 3rd can't be accessed until the first 2 are taken care of. But not only do I get to choose which one I attack first, I also get to choose which weapons I take on my mission. It's almost like this is supposed to be an RPG. I briefly looked over what each gear package contained, fucked up, and chose the Fireteam package. I also didn't really know what I was doing when I chose the Strike Team units. I figured a missile unit and a Mr. Gutsy would be solid choices, deployed the team, and met with the quartermaster to pass what is probably the only skill check in this entire DLC. That got me a Gauss rifle and 8 rounds for it. I got my Fireteam package and figured out that I could get a different weapon requisition holotape, not kill General Chase, drop my current weapons, get the new weapons from the quartermaster, and have the items from 2 different packages. A smart person would have done that to get every weapon from every package, but no combination of letters in Mitten Squad spells out the word smart. So I didn't do that, picked a direction, and started walking. A few individuals were executed, nothing I could do about that really, and I arrived at the first location. Probably. I'll be honest, I don't remember if this area had anything to do with the quest or not. Even after reviewing the footage, my mind is like a melted popsicle. I spent about 10 minutes clearing out the area. The only trouble spot was just below a guard tower, where I got stuck with a poorly timed save, an assault rifle equipped, and not enough time to swap it out for something else. Spray and pray doesn't work well in this challenge. This was not the first time, nor would it be the last time, that VATS has gotten me out of a sticky situation. The spider drones made their first appearance not long later. You might think that these would be annoying as hell, little evasive drones that attack en masse and explode, but they were not. The 10mm pistol proved that their hitboxes are absurdly large, to the point that attacking them with a pistol is about the same as using an aimbot. The Chimera Armor Depot was just up ahead. There were 2 fuel tanks there that needed to be destroyed. The first one was a piece of pie. Then I fucked up big time. Easily one of the worst quick saves I've ever made. Absolutely no opportunity to do anything other than watch myself die over and over and over again. I went back in time a bit, destroyed the tanker again, then almost got fucked again. I got lucky with a wall I could hide behind and a shot with VATS that landed perfectly. The second tanker was guarded by a tank. That thing is a nightmare with treads. It did not help at all that it was on a surface with a bunch of little slopes, meaning that my grenades would often roll away, doing no damage to the tank. It took almost every grenade I had to destroy it. If it weren't for the wall I hid behind, I have no idea how long it would have taken. I rigged the tanker to explode before taking out the remaining soldiers, which I didn't do, got teleported back to HQ, which was awfully convenient, commanded my strike team to wait for me outside the listening post, and together we assaulted the fortress. Let me tell you, the extra forces on my side made this a lot more manageable. But just as every virtual dog goes to hell when it dies, what the fuck does that even mean? The Chinese had missile launcher soldiers guarding the listening post. They take about as much firepower to kill as the fire troopers they also had guarding the area. Trial, error, persistence, pain, and pleasure are the name of the game. Having a missile launcher trooper of my own on my own side didn't hurt either. Inside the listening post were a bunch of camping pussies. They camped the active camo, hoarded the energy sword for themselves, and thought they were good at Halo. But I'm better. Sure, I died a bunch of times, but I got one of them with a Gauss rifle no-scope. Then, there were more camo bitches hiding in the room with the metal on the wall. You probably know which one I'm talking about. I spent several minutes here. I think there were 3 of them in it. It's hard to tell when you're dying over and over and over again. Buttons proved his virtual life had meaning after all when I used it as a shield, and we cleared the listening post. I was sent back to HQ by the DM, used that requisition trick I mentioned a few minutes ago to get a missile launcher, mines, grenades, a Gauss rifle, an assault rifle, and a sniper rifle, before leading the charge to take out the energy field. The immediate and most significant problem here is that there's a never-ending bombardment of missiles being sent downrange. I'm sure you can figure out why that's bad for yourself. Before long, I found myself in the trenches on my way to a glorious demise. Everything I've described about my foes applies here as well, but this time I've got a missile launcher. Also, I can reverse pickpocket my virtual allies, which is kinda neat. You might have seen a few clips throughout this video where my limbs are damaged. My limbs can still be crippled upon me dying. Reloading a quick save doesn't halt that animation. Being crippled when I die can sometimes make the animation appear upon reloading a save. Just wanted to clear that up. After forcing my way through the trenches and taking out every communist I saw along the way, I arrived at the field itself. An impossible number of shock mines that fry your brain or something. Once I'd cleared out the one building on the border, I thought that the electricity on the ground would do damage to me as I passed through it. Like I'd have to carefully navigate a specific path. I didn't. I avoided what looked like snowy ant mounds, but that was about it. Nothing complicated. With the force field shut down and a warning rocket sent their way, I ran barefoot through the snow on my way to the Chinese compound, took out a turret, and entered the facility with my comrades. To my surprise, there was another skill check opportunity here. Maybe Bethesda has learned a thing or two since Fallout 76's Backlash. The general killed himself. The other general broke the fourth wall by telling me that my training was complete, and I exited the simulation. Inside the armory I'd unlocked were an assortment of toys. But more importantly, there was a notification telling me that Operation Anchorage had been completed. With my Chinese stealth suit and a missile launcher, I killed everyone inside the base and beat Fallout 3's Operation Anchorage DLC without taking any damage. This video is sponsored by nothing, because I don't accept sponsorships from literal trash. When Fallout made the shift from a turn-based RPG to a first or third-person RPG, many feared that the ability to target specific parts of an enemy's body to attack would be lost. That mechanic returned in Fallout 3 as a sort of companion to the more modern first-person shooter gameplay. But what if you wanted to play Fallout 3 as if it was one of the classic Fallout games? Can you beat Fallout 3 by only attacking with VATS? I was going to name myself Action Boy based on the perk, but I felt Vault Chungus better represented my goals for this playthrough. I played around with my character a bit and started assigning special points. Using only VATS to attack means that having as many action points as possible is crucial, which is why agility is at 9. Intelligence is useful for leveling up faster, which can let us more easily get certain perks that improve accuracy when using VATS. Because there are no weapon restrictions, somewhat evenly distributing the remaining points is a fairly safe strategy. Vault life was pretty good for a while. There was a celebration in my honor. I got to kill a bug, and had to take a test to determine whether my life is fun or filled with misery. I cheated on that test and chose repair, melee weapons, and small guns as my skills, and it was time to escape the vault. The first issue with VATS that I noticed is that it's a finicky system. Sometimes, when you activate it, the game has a hard time figuring out what your target is. It's like Lag had a love affair with a blind otter, and their child is VATS. I pretty much killed everyone I could inside Vault 101 to both level up faster and to get their supplies. The big downside to attacking with VATS is that you're pretty much defenseless while you wait for your action points to regenerate. That's not much of a problem in a one-on-one fight, but when you're dealing with multiple enemies, it's a good way to drain your supply of stim packs. Outside the vault, I leveled up, put the points into small guns, sneak, and science of all things. You don't start getting the VATS perks until you're a few levels into the game, so the early perks are more about boosting stats. I mean, that's like 90% of what the perks are, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. I took the long way to Megaton, discovering signs and whatnot, and things got off to a phenomenal start when my Pip-Boy was broken. The 10mm pistol was my best weapon and it's equipped, so it's not a huge deal. I tricked Moira into buying most of my trash. I tried to sell her my copy of Raid Shadow Legends, but even she's not stupid enough to buy that. I couldn't even pay her to take it. I did manage to get myself some useful supplies though. Somehow hacked into Moriarty's terminal while he was using it, was as respectable as I could possibly be to Gob, and left to explore the Capital Wasteland. My first stop was the Super Duper Mart because why not? I killed a few creatures on the way there, bugs and dogs. This wastelander presented himself before me with a gift he didn't even know was for me. 2 hunting rifles. As I looted his body, a death claw crept out from behind the corner to say hello. I thought that was the end. Luckily for me, it rode the short bus and didn't notice me. Inside the shopping center, I found some neat weapons and began taking on an army of raiders. Another issue with VATS is that when you miss shots, it's pretty annoying. That's it. A fun side effect of this no Pip-Boy thing is that once I became over-encumbered, I had a hard time getting out of the line of sight of a raider. Also, I couldn't equip any of the weapons I'd found. Couldn't repair anything either, which is also fun. I'd been playing with a controller, so when the game crashed for the second or third time, I took the opportunity to disable my Pip-Boy mod and unplug the virtual cord to use a keyboard and mouse instead. That fixed the problem, but the Pip-Boy mod was still active. I wasn't entirely sure why, but that's a problem for future me. Even though this is future me talking about past me, and current me doesn't really remember if it ended up being a problem for the future me past me just mentioned. In other news, I used my grenades to blast a super mutant brute. Well, I tried. For some reason, the grenades landing at his feet did nothing. They sure as shit hurt his friend though. And he was battered and bruised by the shrapnel, so it seemed fitting that I play Ring Around the Rosie with him and beat him to death with a baseball bat. 2 Talon Company mercs tried their hand at ending the legend of Vault Chungus. You can probably guess how that turned out for them. I'll give you a hint if you're having trouble. They're dead. A nearby centaur came to investigate the noise, which presented me with a perfect opportunity to use a combat knife. Nothing says use a knife like tentacles being swung from the mouth of a monster. Rather than following the main questline, I wandered around for a bit. In my adventures, I found a small mutant camp and got my hands on a minigun that a brute let me borrow after I killed him and picked it up off his corpse. Then I saw a wasteland captive being held hostage by a mutant and his pet. I knew what I had to do. I've always done the right thing, no matter how hard it is. I killed the captive first. I had to make sure he wasn't going to suffer at the hands of the master, who's been dead for a long time. The pocket full of posies technique worked wonders on the centaur. There was a 3-for-1 special on dead raiders if you used the promo code GRENADE at checkout, and I battled 2 minigun-wielding brutes with a flamer. Yeah, the flamer is just awful. I gave myself a preview of the suffering to come when I used the Chinese pistol on the last remaining brute, and I went down into Rock Creek Canyon. I knew there was nothing good for me down there, not because of the Mire Lurk, but because of what I saw on the walls, or rather what I didn't see on the walls. They were gone. The curse of Grandma Sparkle had begun to spread. I didn't waste too long down there. The longer you're near the darkness, the more likely you are to feel the desire to join it. It spread beyond the canyon, reaching the lampposts outside the National Guard depot. Then the game crashed. The crash is like a reset button. It's annoying, but it keeps my stupid comments about this glitchy game at bay. I went down into the ruins of the depot, battling robots and turrets along the way. The usual tactic for dealing with enemies is attacking then retreating behind a wall to wait for your AP to regenerate. It's especially useful on enemies that are slow and can't reach you. Down in the weapons quarters, I found a bunch of weapons, most of which were not in great condition, but were still useful nonetheless. I fought my way through more robots and more of the building's defenses until I got back outside and could return to Megaton to sell what I didn't need. With all the supplies in the world, I went back to one of the raider camps I found and began making my way through the metro station in search of Galaxy News Radio. The hunting rifle made quick work of the ghouls, and before long I emerged outside. Took out the mutants, giving Sarah Lyons trouble. I could tell they needed all the help they could get, and the behemoth arrived just in time for tea. A miniature nuclear cup of tea fired from a portable version of the superior siege weapon. Inside the GNR building, I spoke to 3 Dog, who fled from me despite me doing nothing wrong. He probably knew what was coming. I followed him into his room and bonked him with my bat. Because I remained hidden, nobody knew that he was dead. Some jokester even told me that 3 Dog is waiting for me upstairs. He's gonna be sad later, and that makes me happy. With my only lead now rhyming with that word, I returned to Megaton to have a few of my weapons repaired and stocked up from Craterside Supply one final time. Bad tidings are about to befall this little community. I started my rampage with Mr. Moriarty. In my defense, I don't think it was the bat that killed him. I think it was bouncing his face off his cabinet. Sharp corners are dangerous, almost as dangerous as a maniac throwing grenades indoors. Not that I would know anything about that. Back outside, I tempted the radioactive gods of fate by firing a mini-nuke inside the boundaries of the town, hoping the big nuke would hear the commotion and wake up from its nap. If not, that's okay. I've got ways of waking it up. Pretty much everyone in Megaton died. Some fought back, more bravely than others, but most turned their faces into a slipping hazard on the ground. Moira was one of the last to fall before me. I used my patented baseball bat baseball swing to strike her out of existence. Once I'd raided her cache of weapons, I'd left and began heading towards Smith Casey's garage. Mel tried to mug me and lost his face in a freak shotgun accident. Closer to my destination, I got into a brief firefight with a few rat scorpions that were pretty mean to me. Critical shots proved to be my ally again. I discovered some alien ammo down in a radiation hole, as well as a ridiculous number of Talon Company mercs, making me think the location I discovered was their base or something. Oh, and I took out a giant rat scorpion with a fat man. Better to overkill than underkill. The Talon Company base was a real treat in the classical sense of the word. A lot of things died down there, and I do mean a lot. On the plus side, their armor found a new home around my body, and, more importantly, I now have a missile launcher. I went inside Fort Bannister. The door was locked, but I've never let that stop me before. The sniper rifle I'd gotten some minutes or hours ago was effective, but used a solid chunk of my available action points. After using the circle around an object to take advantage of the limitations of a game from 2008 technique, I entered Smith Casey's garage and entered the simulation. It was here I decided to really change things up. Instead of activating the failsafe, I spent some time virtually tormenting people. Unfortunately, VATS doesn't work in Tranquility Lane, so I couldn't punch Timmy Nussbaum in his stupid head. But sometimes, psychological damage is more fun than physical damage, so I convinced him that his parents are getting a divorce because of him and that they never loved him to begin with. Braun then continued the theme of abusive relationships by tasking me with breaking up the Rockwell's marriage. I found a rolling pin and thought that Mr. Rockwell dying would be a good way to end their marriage. Didn't work, so instead, I played both of them like a fiddle by planting another woman's underwear on his desk. Betty then told me to arrange for Mabel Henderson to die. I killed her, reported back to him. They didn't really listen to what he said, killed her again. Then the third time I got the message and got sneaky with it. All it took was fiddling with a stove and she accidentally lit herself on fire and burned to death. That doesn't disqualify the run. I set the stage, but Mabel was the one who killed herself. It's no different than leading someone to a mine that was already on the ground when I found it. Next came the last and most fun part of any simulation, putting on a clown mask and running around with a knife killing everyone in town. This really takes me back to when I was a boy. Christmas was always a special time. With Braun's demands fulfilled, I'd left the simulation with my father and agreed to meet him back at Rivet City. On the way there, I ended the evil of Grandma Sparkle, took out some raiders, discovered the Citadel, and arrived at the Jefferson Memorial. As I usually do, I entered the memorial to clear it out before proceeding with the story. I used the .44 Magnum briefly because robots and because it's a powerful weapon, but switched to a combat shotgun later on because at extremely close range, it's overwhelmingly powerful, unless you miss. With the building mostly cleared out, I continued onward towards Rivet City, bought some things from the market, met Dad, left Dad, and I'd somehow failed at clearing out the memorial, despite being able to sleep in a bed in the basement. The last standing mutant was on the upper level, hiding around one of the corners I'd somehow missed. I informed Dad that it was clear, I acted as his errand boy for a few minutes, and the Enclave arrived. Thanks to the points I'd put into small guns, the .44 Magnum was capable of ending an Enclave soldier with 2 headshots. The game crashed again because it wouldn't be a Fallout 3 playthrough without a stupid number of crashes. I watched Dad bite the dust and escape to the Taft tunnels with Dr. Lee and her worthless friends. After fighting my way through at least 2 feral ghouls, Madison informed me that Garza was feeling faint. I convinced her to leave him behind, escaped the tunnels, arrived at the Citadel, leveled up again, spread out the points across a few different skills because I was feeling pretty good about my ability to kill anything that moved, picked the Child at Heart perk to make life easier later on, got the location of Vault 87 from Rothschild, and left to find the vault. Almost. There was a Megaton that still needed to be annihilated first. Also, there was this weird bug where the marker on my compass was fixed in position. Reloading a save didn't fix it, fast traveling didn't fix it. It was pretty weird. I'd never encountered a bug like that before. I killed Roy Phillips outside Tenpenny Tower, as is tradition, blew up Megaton, I'd planted the charge shortly after I got explosives up to 25, then killed both Alistair Tenpenny and Mr. Burke. I very briefly assumed the role of Mr. Burke, then decided that the residents of Tenpenny Tower were a stain on the capital wasteland, meaning it fell to me to help nature take its course. In time, they would all die anyway. I was just speeding things up a bit. This also meant that I could swap out the Talon Company armor for a Tenpenny security uniform, which is both better and provides a boost to small guns. With my good deed for the day done, I spread skill points out amongst a few different combat skills, tripped on an explosive rock, tested out the Ripper, which uses an absurd amount of action points, helped a mutant with its cow problem, smooth-talked my way into Little Lamplight, and entered Murder Pass. To be honest, this was not that bad. The combat shotgun is more than enough to handle mutants at a close range. There's enough time between fights that AP has enough time to regenerate, so it's actually kind of boring. Walk towards an enemy, activate instant kill mode, reload the weapon, maybe use a stim pack, then do it again. Hell, even the Super Mutant Master wasn't much of a threat. I tried using a Super Sledge a bit inside the vault. It was okay. Some weapons that are normally extremely powerful suck when used exclusively in VATS. The 44 Magnum is as useful and adorable as ever. It's not often that I'm more than capable of killing everything I come in contact with as I push through Vault 87, but this was definitely one of those times. Minigun still sucks, if you were wondering. My special assault rifle had been repaired and had enough ammo to kill everything in the wasteland, so I relied on it, along with grenades, to get through most of the vault. I freed Fox, then gave him a colonoscopy with a miniature nuclear warhead. As tough as he was, he couldn't handle it and died. Rest in peace, Fox. I continued fighting my way through everything in my path until I got the Gek and was abducted by the Enclave. Now at level 11, I dumped all my points into small guns, picked Finesse as my perk for more criticals, and killed every Enclave soldier and scientist I found. None were spared. With small guns at nearly 100, the 44 Magnum can one-shot almost every Enclave soldier with a headshot. I didn't even let the sentry bots live. I blasted them with a Fat Man, just as Fox would have wanted. I also went ahead and convinced President Eden to destroy the base after I left. Outside the base, I tested out the Gatling laser I'd found inside on a Yao Guai. 95% chance to hit, and I missed almost every single shot I fired. Tried it out on a bloatfly too. Whiffed it again. Back at the Citadel, I raised small guns to 100, bought a few things from Durga, blasted everyone with a Fat Man just to see what would happen, wasted a few minutes in the process, returned, and went outside to follow Liberty Prime to freedom. As expected, because this run had gone rather smoothly, he got stuck. Stuck in the sense that part of the ground wouldn't spawn, so he had nowhere to go. Reloading a save, oddly enough, only made it worse. My very existence is a crime against reality, so I swam through the void and decided to brute force my way to the end of the game by save scumming my way through the energy barrier and fighting my way through all the Enclave inside the memorial until I arrived at the Rotunda. Colonel Autumn was waiting for me by himself, and none of the buttons worked. My only remaining option was to once again brute force my way into the Purifier. It was a wasted effort, as the buttons in there didn't work either. The game had crashed during my adventures and disappointment, which had the added benefit of spawning the ground, allowing Liberty Prime to walk to the memorial. My second time inside, I fought through the Enclave again and entered the Rotunda. Sarah Lyons was nowhere to be seen. The third time, she was inside the memorial, but just stood there and did nothing, even after taking a bullet to the chest. I ignored it. I had plans for her, and for the last time, I fought through the Enclave. I used the worst gun at my disposal to end Colonel Autumn to ensure he suffered as much as possible. Sarah decided to be useful for once in her life, and I agreed to activate the Purifier. But she was coming with me, whether she wanted to or not. I tried knocking her out with a bullet and dragging her inside with me, but the door wouldn't close. I briefly considered letting the entire place blow up, but realized the error of my ways, activated the purifier, and I was too late, I think. Right as I hit the button, the entire place blew up, and I beat Fallout 3 by only attacking with VATS.